Hey guys, Casey here, and today we're going to be doing a review on Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is basically the fourth entry in Bandai Namco's Dragon Ball video game history with the 8th generation of consoles. Looking back on it, we've gotten Xenoverse, Xenoverse 2, Dragon Ball FighterZ, and then we skipped 2019, and now for 2020 we are kicked off with the first RPG Dragon Ball game, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. Now what I mean by the first time is that Dragon Ball Z is usually rotated between being one or two genres of games. Either it's a full-blown fighting game, meaning it's either a 2D or 3D fighting game, or it's a little bit adventurous like the Xenoverse games, maybe like Raging Blast where we see alternate timelines and such, but it's mainly a 3D fighting game in that regard. Xenoverse, in my opinion, was the first time that we went after, since Dragon Ball Online, creating your own character, exploring the Dragon Ball universe from a different perspective other than playing as pre-existing characters. You create your own character and you get to roam around some different hubs. With Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, the game is going to be retelling the four main sagas of Dragon Ball Z. The Saiyan Saga, the Frieza Saga, the Cell Saga, and the Buu Saga. And throughout all four of these sagas, you're going to be playing as mainly four rotating characters between Goku, Gohan, Vegeta, and Piccolo. Between these four characters, we're going to see their character growths and their experiences throughout each four of these sagas. Now, if you watch the show, you already know how the story plays out. But playing this game, it's retelling of the story, in my opinion. At times, the highs are so high, and at other times, it's kind of disappointing. And we're going to get right into that. So first off, when it comes to the story, it pretty much nails the pacing the best way it can as a video game. What I mean by that is there's about, the original cut of Dragon Ball Z was about 291, 292 episodes, one or the other. And throughout all of that, you've got some filler and then the four main sagas. Well, with this game, what it does is it keeps the same tropes and the same storylines that we know, the main ones at least, from the anime, and it kind of shortens it down so it can fit within a 25 to 30 hour adventure without it being too long. Because if the game was going to retell every detail that the anime did, you pretty much have a really long game that's basically just the anime and then you play it. So in that regard, I give the developers credit for that. They did the best they could in that regard. However, the stuff that they do choose to cut out a lot of the times kind of are like key scenes. So I'm just going to go over a few of the key scenes that, in my opinion, they shortened or cut out that really they shouldn't have. In the Buu Saga, for example, when Mr. Satan befriends Majin Buu finds that stray dog and eventually heals it, and Majin Buu learns the value of friendship and being liked by other people. Well, instead of the dog getting shot by those poachers, or those hunters, I should say, instead they shoot Mr. Satan for the fact that they didn't. I'm assuming that the ESRB probably would have rated this game rated M if they shot the dog instead. I'm not sure why they made that choice, but shooting Mr. Satan instead of the dog I find as a stupid decision. But a more key moment that they did cut out was the speech that Goku gives Frieza when he goes Super Saiyan, and Frieza's like, "Who are you?" Instead of him giving that full-blown kind of miniaturized speech and Goku defines who he is and comes to terms that he is a Saiyan, but he's also an Earthling, they kind of shorten it down a little bit. And another time, and this is the key one for me, is that Trunks, his like Ultra Super Saiyan form, where he's like basically the size of Broly, his fight with Cell gets cut. It's nowhere in the game at all. On top of that, Vegeta, if anybody remembers correctly, Vegeta fights Cell, Perfect Cell, and he's getting his ass beat. And then Vegeta decides to whip out his new move, Final Flash. And when he uses it against Cell, even Cell's impressed. It's a super powerful move, and it's the first time that Vegeta demonstrates the move. But instead, we don't get that moment at all. And it's little things like that that I find kind of, why? And it hurts because the developers of this game nailed the highs of this game. The key moments, basically the finale to each saga, when Goku fights Vegeta, that end cutscene when Goku fights Frieza, that end cutscene in the Cell Saga, Gohan versus Cell, and Goku and Vegeta versus Buu at the end of the Buu Saga, those are phenomenal in all aspects when it comes to the music and the voice acting and the performances and how they're directed. They nailed it. Like, in some regards, I would prefer to watch that over the anime's cut of it. They did a great job with that. And so it just kind of hurts that some moments in the anime, some moments in this game, they kind of lack a lot in comparison to the highs that they give. You can see the potential that the developers have with this game when it comes to their storytelling, but in certain aspects they choose to cut back on it. And so it's kind of a take or miss with it, but that is to be said. Overall though, when it comes to the story, this is pretty much the best retelling of Dragon Ball Z that I've seen in a Dragon Ball game. I can't really think of anything that comes close to it. Again, yes, the lows are kind of weird, but the highs are so high, and it thoroughly retells a lot of the story for what it's given. On top of that, what I really liked what the game did was in between each arc, they put their own filler in there. And some of the side quests actually kind of flesh out the post or pre-saga stuff. So it's really interesting when you get into that aspect of it. And some of the, like for instance, the filler in between the Cell Saga and the Buu Saga that you can do, Gohan's kind of going through a psychological evaluation of himself and who he believes himself to be, and he even says he has to do some soul searching after his father's passed away. It's stuff like that that I really like. Overall though, a lot of the filler is whatever, but the story, yeah, this is the best retelling of Dragon Ball Z from any Dragon Ball game that I've seen thus far. Now let's move over into the gameplay of things, because I think that's where it's really apparent for a Dragon Ball game to get right. In my opinion, Dragon Ball kind of has to nail one of two things. It's got to nail the aesthetic and the visuals of a Dragon Ball fight, which is crazy, okay? You're moving at light speeds, shooting huge energy blasts, and a lot of martial arts are involved. You've got those three main aspects to Dragon Ball's fighting, and so the games kind of have to recreate that in their own right. On top of that, you've also got to have a fighting mechanic system that works, okay? It can't just be button masher of the sorts. We've seen different iterations of this throughout Dragon Ball games, a lot of them. For instance, the Budokai Tenkaichi games, the 3D fighting mechanics for those games were kind of seen as not too competitive wise. Well, the games like Budokai and Dragon Ball FighterZ, those were, because they were 2D fighting games, they nailed the fighting mechanics, but they don't necessarily capture the fighting of the anime that Dragon Ball is so iconic and known for. And because of that, it's kind of hard for Dragon Ball games to nail this. And I give credit where credit's due. This game kind of goes for more of like Xenoverse's approach to things. A lot of it's in the sky, you're flying, a lot of after imaging and zipping around and speed and flying, and then you go into your combos. I don't find the fighting system too in-depth. It's basically 1 or 2 hit combos, and you have your pre-displayed special moves that you can use. You can shoot some key blasts. I found that about 3/4 of the game, I didn't really have a challenge in terms of the fighting. It was pretty easy to pick up and play. Sometimes you have some difficulty spikes, but because of the healing items in the game, if you utilize those correctly, you really shouldn't have any trouble breezing through this game. It's not too in-depth, again. But what I will give the game credit is that the aesthetic of the fights are awesome. You've got what they do with some of the bosses in this game, and how, because this is just purely a single player game, they don't have to worry about online PvP or anything. The villains are able to do these gigantic, enormous moves that actually have you moving around the map, exiting and re-entering certain blast zones. It's really cool, and it feels like a Dragon Ball fight. It doesn't necessarily play like one. As an interesting fighting game, it's pretty dulled down, but overall I will give the aesthetic of the game's fighting huge credit, so you can take that how you will. Now we have to talk about the open world. This is the first time Dragon Ball has been an RPG, and in my opinion it does not work at all. Dragon Ball Z especially, the characters are so overpowered at this point where regular RPG mechanics and games that we've seen before, whether it's the Elder Scrolls or Dragon Quest, whatever it may be, these games, their RPG mechanics do not fit at all with what the Dragon Ball universe has. In Dragon Ball Z, every character can fly, every character can move at lightning speeds, and every character pretty much has so much strength to them that they don't really have any obstacles in their path. As a result of that, what we're given is a map that is cool to see. Don't get me wrong. To have a Dragon Ball, an open world Dragon Ball map where we have West City, or we have a King Kai's planet to explore, or Master Roshi's house, and you can go to the battlefields where iconic moments took place and just fly around them. Like that is cool, but it gets stale after a while. It's just the same placemat that it was when you came there initially a few hours ago, and you're back. It's the same thing. Nothing's changed. They're not very detailed maps. Again, Dragon Ball's not a very detailed world in any aspect of the imagination, so I don't expect the video games to be any different. But that's why, for me, an open world RPG does not work in the name of Dragon Ball Z. At the beginning of the game, it kind of gives you the impression that you're going to be traveling and going through this massive adventure on foot. You play as Goku walking with Gohan, but then you're given Flying Nimbus, and eventually Goku's able to fly around. And I just feel like if characters can fly in a game, at lightning speeds like Goku and his friends do, the RPG mechanics just aren't going to work. When it comes to the side quests, they're pretty much dull. They're just fetch quests. You're just getting ingredients or items for people. There's nothing more to it. There's not really any interesting storylines that I would say. And there's a lot of moments in the game where it'll have a pretty long cutscene. I would say you can have up to like 10-15 minute cutscenes in this game, and then it'll cut, give you a little break, and you can just literally go fly to the next place on the map and then start the next part of the story. It's things like that where I'm like, I feel like the world itself is kind of just like this barrier in between each event, and it's trying to get you to do stuff, but you don't want to do that stuff. You just want to play the meat and potatoes of the game, which is the main story. And the filler of the game kind of slows it down a lot too. Once you, in between the Saiyan, the Frieza to Cell, and Cell to Buu sagas, they'll have you do these kind of annoying fetch quests, and it reminds you like, why am I doing this? I want to go play the main story. And again, the filler in between these arcs, it has its good and has its bad, and this is the bad of it. The gameplay aspect of it sucks. So overall, the open world RPG mechanics of this game, in my opinion, they just don't work. Like, it doesn't feel like I'm playing a role-playing game. It feels like I'm playing a Dragon Ball game that's trying to be something it's not. And we're gonna go right back to this because I feel like if they wanted to nail the Dragon Ball universe in a role-playing game aspect, I have an idea of how they could have done it. Now, when it comes to the menus of the game and how you develop your character, again, they try to make it kind of RPG-like, but it's nothing special. The skill tree in and of itself is kind of there for you to just, after you've collected enough orbs, which are scattered all throughout the map, you'll fly around and collect orbs, you'll fight and collect orbs, you'll complete quests and collect orbs. You get a shit ton of orbs in this game. And accumulating these orbs will allow you to kind of upgrade your Kamehameha ability, or your Gallic Gun ability, or your Meteor Crash ability. Different moves you'll be able to upgrade. Then you'll hit a cap, and you'll have to go to the training ground, complete a fight, and then that will allow you to unlock the next stage in that move set. And on top of this, a lot of the moves will be locked on throughout the game until you reach a certain level. So the game won't allow you to get too overpowered moves depending on your level. Again, I feel like it's just forced. I feel like if the game just wanted to let itself flow the way it should, you will unlock this as you go. One of the main gripes I have with this game are the healing items. Pretty much the way the leveling mechanic works in this game is you don't ever have to worry about going to grind or level up, which I think is a big thing for RPGs. You should be inclined to go explore the open world to become better. So when you come back to these main quests, you feel like you earned that victory. In this game, because the fighting mechanics aren't too in-depth, you're pretty much what's going to determine your victory or outcome is your level. If you're under leveled, you will die, but if you have enough healing items, you'll be fine. And if you're on par with the person and level-wise, you pretty much should have no problem. And if you're over leveled, you will decimate them. And that's pretty much how the game goes. Healing items, I feel like they're a little overpowered in that regard because you can get so many in such a big bulk. You really shouldn't have any problem. The game also tries to introduce this aspect of communities, which are just these grids, and you'll unlock little icons of the characters. You'll place them on there and they'll boost your stats in different areas. It could be cooking, it could be the Z Warriors, it could be the adult community. Different communities. It's cool. It's a cool way to boost yourself. I feel like the layout of it is kind of weird and I really didn't like it. At first, it's just like, why is it? The way it's designed is just weird to me. And then to top it off, the game tries to give you the idea that you can have your own party. But really, if you're playing the main story, you're rarely, on any rare occasion, are you going to be having a rotating cast of characters that you can pick between. A lot of the times you're just going to be by yourself and you don't get really the choice. If you're adventuring by yourself, then you can rotate the characters, but other than that, and the game also gives you an option to have a lot of like assists and have the allies on your team use their moves at your command against a certain enemy. But if you're fighting and if you're fighting in the story, you only get very few opportunities where you have allies where you can use that mechanic for, so it really just doesn't work out too much. I feel like if the game really wanted to enforce a party aspect of things, they would have given a lot more character choice with it. And so let's wrap this up by talking about the presentation of the game. And in my opinion, the presentation, graphics-wise, this game, for a Dragon Ball game, it looks great. For any other game, not so much. The environments are very low res, they're not too detailed, and there's a lot of moments where, like, the voice acting is great in this game, but there's a lot of moments where there's some awkward pauses or script dialogue that just doesn't match up. And the game has 3 types of cutscenes, where you'll either have dialogue where you press the button each time you want to advance it and they'll talk, or you'll press the button each time to advance it, but instead of it being said, it's just written out and the characters will make these weird sound effects like ha, ha, and you're just like, okay, so they can voice act these scenes, but they can't voice act these ones, and some of them are main scenes which they choose not to voice out the dialogue. And then the third type are the cinematic ones where you can't control the flow of the conversation, it goes at its own pace. However, you have these actual acted out cutscenes. The cutscenes with the dialogue that you get to control the flow of, those cutscenes are just literally the character models stiff, acting out, and the lips never match up to what they're saying. Some Dragon Ball games nail the English dub, other ones they don't match it up. This one does not match it up at all. But when it comes to the use of music, the style of how they like to give you the impression that this is an episode of Dragon Ball in between each saga. When you finish a saga and you go to the next one, they give you that iconic, like, Dragon Ball Z, the next episode of Dragon Ball Z. It's awesome. This is the best Dragon Ball intro I've seen in any Dragon Ball game. They absolutely nailed it too. So in that regard, I feel there's a lot of heart that was put into the presentation of this game and making it feel like it was Dragon Ball Z all the way back into the 1980s and 90s. It's great. It has its awkward times, but overall, I love the presentation. If you're a Dragon Ball fan, you're going to appreciate a lot of it. So with everything said and done, I just want to reiterate on the 3 main points. The story of Dragon Ball was pretty much nailed for as best as it could be. It's a long game with a lot of cutscenes, but if you enjoy the Dragon Ball story, you're going to love this. If you never played Dragon Ball and you play through this game, you're actually going to be pretty confused in a lot of moments because they do skip over quite a bit of stuff that they would assume you'd already know about a lot of characters. When it comes to the gameplay, I feel like that's the weakest point of the game. I'm not saying it's not a fun game to play, but if you are a fighting game enthusiast, you're going to see that the fighting mechanics of this game aren't too in-depth. But if you like Dragon Ball, you're going to have fun with it. The open world is nothing special in my opinion, and I feel like whenever I'm forced to try to explore it, it doesn't work. The presentation of this game for a Dragon Ball game, again, is A1. And you notice the main thing I'm saying here is for a Dragon Ball game. What I mean by that is, for a Dragon Ball game, this game is great. As a regular game, for regular audiences, if you don't know much about Dragon Ball or anything about Dragon Ball and you play this game, it's going to be a completely different experience. And so with that said, I'm going to be giving 2 different scores. So, for a regular video game, I give this game a 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10 because I believe on my scale, a 7 being a C, it's a good game. It's an okay game for audiences. It's a good game for other audiences. But if you don't know anything about Dragon Ball, your experience is going to be hindered on that factor. It can be good or okay to you. You may have fun or you may not. That's why I'm giving it a 7. For a Dragon Ball game, I give this an 8. I give it an 8 because the presentation, the retelling of the story, they are all A1. The music and the voice acting, it's superb. But the gameplay does take it back a few notches for me, and I feel like the best way that Bandai Namco could have nailed this game is if they didn't do the RPG BS and they just let it flow. They did a retelling of the story but make it linear, and it would have been, in my opinion, a lot nicer and really doubled down on the fighting mechanics. Now personally, what I think they should have done was if they wanted to really do an RPG Dragon Ball game, they would have gone to Dragon Ball when Goku was a kid. In my opinion, this fits the mechanics of an RPG much better. None of the characters can really fly at that point, and Goku's still learning his own strength. He unlocks certain items, and it's a MacGuffin storyline, and the search for Dragon Balls, in my opinion, would have been a lot more interesting. And if you understand Dragon Ball and how the characters work, their power scaling, it does work for an RPG. I don't think that Bandai Namco would be willing to take that risk by using the regular Dragon Ball IP instead of attaching Dragon Ball Z to it, because Dragon Ball Z is a lot more well known, and they might be afraid that Dragon Ball's IP will scare off audiences because it's not Dragon Ball Z. But I believe that if they wanted to do an RPG, Dragon Ball would have been the right time. Dragon Ball Z, the characters are just too powerful. Overall, I want to say that this game, it was a blast to play as a Dragon Ball fan, but in a lot of aspects, it does have some shortcomings when it comes to it trying to force an RPG mechanic on you. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next review.